Okay, good morning, everyone. An incredible zechus, an incredible privilege to have another week of learning with all of you. We're going to continue Emir Hashem in Parak Aleph. I kind of warned you a little bit last week that we're going to be in Parak Aleph, so looks like we're going to be in Parak Aleph for the next little while. And in fact, what I'd like to do this week, I think, is something I've never done in a Tehillim shir before, but I actually like to focus really even on the same phrase that we spoke about last week. So if you remember again, just to reorient ourselves a little bit, we are in Tehillim Parak Aleph Pasuk Aleph. David HaMelech writes, Ashrei Ha'ish. The entire essence of this kapitel is the Ashrei Ha'ish. Praiseworthy is the individual. And the reason, as we spoke about, that this kapitel is so incredibly important is because in this kapitel, David HaMelech is giving us the secret to living an Ashrei life. At the end of the day, isn't that what we all want? I want to live an Ashrei life. I want to lead a praiseworthy life. I want to be a praiseworthy individual. And David HaMelech gives us the strategies and the knowledge to be able to do that. So the first step we spoke about is someone lo halach ba'atzas r'shoyim. But what I'd like to draw your attention to is the underlined phrase in number 1, ubederech chatoim lo amad. And he did not go in the pathway of sinners. So although we spoke about this concept last week, and last week, if you remember again, we really focused on Rabbi Soloveitchik's insight of chet versus derech chotim. There's the sin, and then there is the pathway of sin. Two very different things. We spoke about tshuva, we spoke about tara and kapara and tara, but I want to refocus a little bit, really focusing on that same phrase, but going a little bit of a different direction. So what does this mean when David HaMelech says, U'b'derech chatoim lo amad? A person did not stand on the pathway to sin. So over the course of today's shir, we're going to explore 3 different approaches to understanding what King David is trying to convey to us. Take a look at number 2. The first approach is going to be the Al-Shich. So the Al-Shich writes, V'gam lo amad b'derech chatoim. What does it mean that a person didn't stand on the pathway of sin? Now understand, in English, we have the word sin. And the truth is that word covers a variety of different types of infractions. In Lashon HaKodesh, in Hebrew, we have different words which really speak about different types of sinful behavior. A chet, for example, although we translate it as sin, actually refers to an accidental sin. What we call shogeg. Shogeg, an accidental sin. So the Al-Shich writes, V'gam lo amar b'derech chatoim, shu shogeg. What's a chet? A chet is an accidental avera, maisa below hirhur. It's an action without any thought. For example, a person picks up a piece of meat thinking that it's kosher, but it turns out to be not kosher. So first, what the Al-Shich does is helps us define our terms. Although we translate chet as sin, at the end of the day, chet means an accidental sin. Accidental, inadvertent commission of a prohibited act. But maisa, an action, bali hirhur, without thought. Interesting enough, we know this in vidui, right? When a person does personal confession, we say chatasi avisi pashati. A chet is an accidental sin. An avon is an intentional sin for the sake of pleasure. Pesha is an intentional sin with the intention of rebelling against the authority of God. So what does it mean? B'derech chatoim lo amad, right? The Al-Shich lo amad. Ki gam shelo yibatzer me'adam lachto b'shogeg. Lo amad v'nisyatziv b'derech hahu. Ki im nisar v'nishmar milishnospo. So the Al-Shich says something amazing. When David HaMelech says, Ashrei, praiseworthy is the person, Ubederech chatoim lo amad means that a person did not repeat their same mistakes. Now, let's talk about this for just a moment. In halacha, we have 2 different types of what we call accidents. There's the concept of ones. Ones, the Gemara calls, I referenced it in number 3, but we're just going to do really 3 and 4 outside. So the Gemara references the concept of ones. And ones means extenuating circumstances. If something happens, you end up doing something prohibited for reasons beyond your control, that's called an ones. That's called extenuating circumstances. What's the halacha of ones? So the Gemara says, ones rachmana patre. One is exempted for ones behavior. So God forbid, I caused damage to someone else, but it was done, it happened in a totally unavoidable way. I am pater. Now, what's interesting to note is as follows. What is the Jewish liability or the halachic view of liability for accidents? So the phrase often is said, accidents happen. Accidents happen. That's most probably a Gentile sentiment and not a Jewish one. Because interestingly enough, from a Jewish perspective, there is absolute responsibility and liability for accidents. For example, the paradigmatic example of this, the Gemara Maseches Makos talks about the idea that if, God forbid, Reuven kills Shimon accidentally, inadvertently, there's a halacha, there's a punishment of galus, exile. So what's the paradigmatic example? Reuven is chopping wood. He's chopping wood in the forest. And what happens? As he's chopping wood, the axe handle flies off and, God forbid, kills Shimon. Or he's chopping wood and a splinter flies out and, God forbid, kills Shimon. So what's the halacha? Reuven is responsible. It's an accident, but he's responsible, and he must flee to the Ir Miklat. He must go to the city of refuge. He's exiled. So the Gemara says, I don't understand, but it's an accident. It's an accident, right? Reuven, God forbid, didn't have any malicious intent. And in fact, remember, Reuven was in the middle of the forest, right? There's no one around. So why is there any level of liability? And the Gemara codifies a phrase, and the phrase is, Di'iboy le le'iyune. Reuven should have looked around. Before chopping wood, you have to look around. Is anyone else present? Could the axe handle fall off? You have to check the axe. You have to check your surroundings. You are responsible. You are responsible for your surroundings. Di'iboy le le'iyune, which literally means he should have investigated. He should have looked around. See, in halacha, we see that there are these two types of things. There's ones. There are in life extenuating circumstances, situations beyond your control that you cannot control. For those situations, you are part of, you are exempt. But shogeg, accidents, an accident as defined by something you could have controlled. At the end of the day, halacha says, you are responsible for that. Why? Because I could have exercised greater heed. I could have exercised greater caution. I could have been more attentive. So this is incredible. So really what it turns out is that the Al-Sheikh is saying is, what's a chait? What's a chait? A chait is a sin that I commit because of a lack of attentiveness. It's a sin I commit because I am not paying attention. I don't have malicious intent. I don't have ill will. I don't have a beef with God that I'm trying to go ahead and rebel against him. I just literally fell asleep at the wheel of life. I wasn't attentive, and as a result, I committed an avera. So what does David HaMelech say? This is incredible. To make mistakes, as they say, to err is human. To err is human. That happens. We all make mistakes. So to say that I'm going to prevent myself from making every single mistake, that's a tall order that most of us can't live up to. But David HaMelech says, although you can't prevent the commission of every mistake, what can you do? Which means don't repeat the same mistakes over and over in life. So to err is human. To make a mistake is normal. That we mess up is expected. What is our avodah? Don't repeat the same mistakes. See, his lashon over here, his wording, because a chet is a mistake, and the ways of mistakes, lo amad. Amad means, in the Al-Sheikh's view, is repetition. Making the same mistakes over and over and over in life. That, David HaMelech says, is really unacceptable. And this is such an incredible insight. Because what King David is teaching us is, yes, to err is human. To expect that a person's not going to make mistakes, that's unrealistic. We all make mistakes. That's why we have to be forgiving of one another. And that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu is forgiving of us. We all make mistakes. That's the reality. But the goal in life is, don't repeat the same mistakes. Don't make the same mistakes over and over in life. And I think, although this sounds like such an obvious and straightforward idea, I can only speak for myself, but I often find that in life, I'm not really making new mistakes. Baruch Hashem, I should say differently. I'm not making so many new mistakes. Rather, my greatest challenge is I'm just making the same mistakes over and over and over. It's not like panim chadashos ba'olakan. There's no one new showing up at the simcha, right? It's the same mistakes showing up day after day after day, year after year. I'm doing tshuva for the same things over and over and over. And David HaMelech says, the key to success in life is break the cycle. Break the cycle. I know the mistakes that I'm making. I also know that I'm making them over and over again. So, and this is incredible. So that I should never make mistakes, that's unrealistic expectations. But after I make the mistake, personal responsibility sets in and says, okay, now you know what you did. I know what I did wrong. I know that I fell asleep. I even know tracing back. I know how I got here. My goal is don't repeat the same mistakes in life. So David HaMelech says, step one, or really again, step one for today, in creating an Ashrei life is don't repeat your same mistakes over and over. And by the way, this is not just true in our relationship with Hashem, but it's also true in our relationship with others. You know, in our interpersonal relationships, relationships get into rhythms. They get into rhythms. And so often, if I have a little bit of a strained relationship with someone, whether it's in a marriage or whether it's a child or whether it's a parent, it's often the same triggers that come up over and over and over. And when those triggers come up, often I find myself making the same mistakes in those relationships over and over and over. So the goal in life, whether it's my relationship with Hashem or my relationship with others, is that we make mistakes, that's understood. But once you make it, be aware of it. And once you're aware of it, lo amad, don't stand in the same path. Don't repeat the same mistakes in life over and over. Lesson number 2. In fact, well, before we go on to lesson number 2, just to show you the power, because this yesod is something that we've spoken a lot about in the past, and I find it to be one of the most powerful lessons, that mistakes are a result of a lack of attentiveness. When I fall asleep at the wheel of life and I stop paying attention to how I'm living, that's when I make mistakes. And I venture to say that for most of us, this is true. Right? For most of us, the chatoim, the sins that we commit, and the downfalls we experience often are not as a result of premeditated sinful behavior, but they're more a result of, I just wasn't paying attention. I just wasn't attentive in life. What happens when you're not attentive? So take a look at number 5 on your sheet. So this is actually this week's parsha. We know the story in this week's parsha. Kadosh Baruch Hu tells Avram Avinu that he's going to destroy Sodom. So remember, again, we know the story. So Lot and his wife and his daughters, 2 daughters, are saved from Sodom in the merit of Avram Avinu. And his wife doesn't make it out. She looks back. She turns into a pillar of salt. But ultimately, Lot and his daughters make it out, and they settle in a cave. The daughters thinking that all of humanity has been destroyed, and they're the last 2 women on earth, and their father is the last man on earth. So the Torah says, what do? They go ahead and they get him drunk, and they engage in an act of incest. They become pregnant through their father. So the Torah says something amazing. If you take a look at number 5, so the Torah says, this is in number 5, Pasuk Lamed Gimel, verse 33. Vatashkena asavia yayin balaylahu. So this is the older daughter said to the younger daughter, right? So the older daughter got her father drunk. The older daughter came, she slept with her father. And Lot did not know when he slept with her and when she left. So he was totally unaware. The next night, same thing occurs. Pasuk Lamed 35. So again, the younger daughter gets her father drunk with wine. The younger daughter sleeps with her father. And he did not know when he slept with her and when he left. Isn't it incredible? Isn't it incredible? That same verb, that same word, I should say, the same phrase, velo yada, he didn't know. He didn't know. You didn't know? You didn't know. What do you mean, Lord, you didn't know? You didn't know because you weren't paying attention. It's not the pshat that you got blindsided by an act of incest, right? That you tripped and suddenly again incest occurred. Lo yada means you weren't paying attention. You weren't paying attention. And the real power of this story is, okay, the first night you clearly weren't paying attention. But Lamaisa, the second night, you also chose not to pay attention. Rashi points this out. To make a mistake, even dramatic mistakes occur. But to repeat the same mistake 2 nights in a row, so again, this is a dramatic example of this. But that phrase velo yada, and how many times in life do we make mistakes simply because I'm not paying attention? I'm not paying attention. I'm zoned out. Again, I want to be clear. Lot's intention wasn't to commit an Aveira. Lot's intention was not to do something immoral. Lot just wasn't paying attention. His daughter gave him a lot to drink. Happened night number one, happened night number two. Just wasn't paying attention. In fact, to show you that Lot's motivations were not sinful. You know, when the Gemara talks about, when Halacha talks about drunkenness, there's a level of drunkenness called Shechrusov Shalot, Lot drunk. And what does it mean to get Lot drunk? It literally means you don't know the difference between good and evil. That's Lot drunk. So you see that again, Lot's intention wasn't to sin with his daughters. V'lo yada, just wasn't paying attention. And when you stop paying attention in life, when you stop living life with a sense of directed attentiveness, that's when you make all kinds of mistakes. In fact, but it's not just mistakes. In number 6, so the pasuk says again in Parshas Vayetze, so the Torah says as follows. The Torah says, Vayikas Yaakov Mishnaso. This is when Yaakov has his dream about the ladders and the malachim going up and down. Yaakov Avinu wakes up and he says, Vayomer, Achin yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh. Now I know there is God in this place. Va'anochi lo yadati, and I did not know. And Rashi says in number 7, Va'anochi lo yadati, she'i lo yadati, lo yashanti b'makom kadosh kazeh. Because Yaakov Avinu said, you know, had I known that there was God in this place, I would have never gone to sleep in a place like this. And what an incredible message. Because so many times in life, because we are unattentive or inattentive, we go to sleep. And when we go to sleep, we miss out on all kinds of opportunities. So a lack of attentiveness in life doesn't just cause sin, but a lack of attentiveness in life causes for lost opportunities. Even Yaakov Avinu says, Anochi lo yadati. It's the same phrase, by the way, right? Lot, the phrase by Lot is v'lo yada. Lot did not know. Yaakov Avinu says, Anochi lo yadati. What's the common denominator, lahavdil, between Lot and between Yaakov Avinu? A lack of attentiveness. Yaakov said, I didn't know. I didn't know this was a Makom Kodesh. I did not know what this place was. Lot, I did not know what it was that was going on. So an incredible yisod. What happens when you're not attentive in life, you lose out on opportunities. Either you lose out on positive opportunities, or God forbid, you make terrible mistakes. Conversely, when you're attentive in life, there's incredible power. If you look at number 8 on your sheet, we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. The pasuk says, remember in previous semester, this is by Yaakov Avinu. This is Parshas Vayeshev, by Yosef. When the beginning of this story is the incredible strife between Yosef and his brothers. Yosef tells about the dreams. Brothers are very upset. Yaakov Avinu understands that somehow, some way, these dreams foretell some type of future greatness. So remember, again, the brothers go out to graze the sheep, to pasture the sheep, and Yaakov sends Yosef to look for his brothers. Yosef does not know where the brothers are. So what happens? The Torah says, Vayimtsaehu ish v'nitoa basada. Yosef is lost. He's wandering around in the field. A man finds Yosef wandering around in the fields. Vayishaleo ish lemor, and the man asks him, Mativakesh, Yosef, what are you looking for in life? What are you looking for? Or say, what are you looking for? Mativakesh. Vayomer, Esachai nochim avakesh. Yosef, I'm looking for my brothers. I'm looking for my brothers. Hagidan Ali Ephraim. Tell me, do you know where they're shepherding? And Rabbi Soloveitchik comments on this pasuk, and he says, you have to understand what's happening over here. This man, this Ish, finds Yosef in the field. You know, whenever you see the word Ish, Rabbi Soloveitchik posits, Ish always refers to the man of providence. So it could be the Malach, it could be anyone else, some agent of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And listen to this exchange. You know, if you read the pasuk quickly, so it's a very simple pasuk. Yosef is lost. A guy finds him, clearly seeing that he's lost, and the guy says, "No, what are you looking for?" But on a much deeper level, Rabbi Soloveitchik understands what is about to happen to Yosef. What's about to happen to Yosef is about to be stripped of his clothing, of his dignity, of his identity, and sold as a piece of property. That's what's about to happen over here. The brothers are about to abuse and mistreat him in the most horrific way. That is about to unfold. And this mysterious Ish shows up and essentially says, Yosef, Mativakesh. What do you want? What are you looking for? Not just now, but out of life. Because Yosef, if you could go ahead and remain attentive and remain focused on what you want out of life, then no matter what's going to happen to you in the years to come, you will find a way to be successful. And amazingly enough, what does Yosef answer back to the Ish? You want to know what I want out of life more than anything? Es achai anochi mevakesh. What I want is for my brothers to love me. What I want is to have a normal relationship with my family. My mother is dead. I'm alone in this world. I don't have a mother. All I have is my father and my brothers. And all I want is to have peace with my brothers. Fast forward 22 years. And when Yosef is now the viceroy of Egypt, and he has the ability to exact the most horrific retribution, maybe even deserving retribution, from his brothers, he doesn't do so. Why not? Because Yosef was attentive to what he wanted out of life. And what he wanted out of life was, Es achai anochi mevakesh. What I want is I want my brothers. I want my family. I want us to be a harmonious unit. So when you're attentive to what you want out of life, when you're attentive in life, and you know exactly what you want to do, how you want to do it, where you want to go, nothing derails you. Conversely, when you fall asleep at the wheel of life, that's when you commit the most terrible mistakes. And that's when you lose out on the most wonderful opportunities. So this Al-Sheikh is teaching us, if we kind of bring this all together for this first approach, the Al-Sheikh is teaching us, Ashrei Ish, David HaMelech is telling us, you want to lead a praiseworthy life. How do you lead a praiseworthy life? U'b'derech chatoim lo amad. And b'derech chatoim lo amad means don't repeat your mistakes. Don't repeat your mistakes. To err is human. To repeat mistakes is irresponsible. To err is human. To repeat is irresponsible. We all make mistakes, but don't stand on the pathway of mistakes. Don't repeat the same mistakes over and over and over. That's not appropriate. That's not what should be done. Live life with attentiveness, because if you are inattentive in life, if you fall asleep at the wheel of life, like Lot, Chas v'Shalom, a person could commit many mistakes, and even like Yaakov Avinu, a person could go out and miss out on incredible opportunities. Va'anochi lo yadati. But if I'm able to be a Yosef, and I'm able to live with a sense of attentiveness, I'm able to pay attention in life, I'm able to be focused in life, then ultimately, no matter what life throws my way, I will continue to accomplish and continue to grow. A second approach. Take a look at the Radak. So the Radak in number 9 says something absolutely amazing. He says, B'derech chatoim lo amad. B'derech chatoim lo amad means, Ki achet ya'asa osa adam biyosa bimkomo shoket. So this is incredible. Says the Radak. So remember again, everyone's agreeing definitionally that chet means an accidental sin. Right? That's what chet means. Even though we translate it as sin, and as I said before, in English, the word sin covers many types of negative infractions, but in Judaism, right, or in halacha, I should say. So sin ultimately, again, represents an inadvertent act. So therefore, again, says Radak something amazing. When does a person sin? When does a person commit a chet? Biyoso bimkomo shoket. When life is tranquil. B'maisa, b'dibor, ubalev, with actions, with speech, and in my heart. In other words, what is the Radak saying? And this is incredibly important. When do I get myself in trouble in life? When I have too much time on my hands. When life is too quiet, when there's too much time on my hands, that's when I really get myself into all kinds of trouble. So David HaMelech is saying, Ashrei Ish, praiseworthy is the individual, U'b'derech chatoim lo amad. Amida means I'm standing in place. Standing in place means plenty of time on my hands. Plenty of time. Life is tranquil. Things are good. Life is great. There's no rush. There's no this. There's no that. I'm sitting back. I'm relaxing. Ultimately, again, says Radak, in those moments, if you're amad, if you're standing in place, there's going to be a chet. There's going to be a sinful infraction. Because when there is time on your hands, that's when we generally tend to get ourselves into incredible amount of trouble. Interestingly enough, the pasuk in Eov writes in number 10, Ki Adam la'amal yulad. Man is born for toil. Man is born for toil. Right? At the end of the day, what's my avoda in this world? My avoda in this world is to work. is to work. And in fact, the Mefarshim point out, the Mesudas David says in number 11, Ki Adam, Halo Adam, Nivra, Lios, Amelal Tarfo. So a person, if you want something out of life, you have to be ready to work for it. The Malbim, number 12. This is incredible. Ki Adam la'amal yulad, sha'adam nolad la'amal biyagiyah kapav. Man was created to toil, to work. Uba amalo yavi lachmo. You could only bring your bread through work. And if you acquire wealth, not through effort, let's say you inherit wealth, you acquire wealth somehow without effort, that wealth will not be sustained. Sof davar she'akar hatzlachas ha'adam talei b'ishtadluso u'ba'amalo u'b'giyah kapo. At the end of the day, your success in life is directly related to the amount of effort you put in. And this is such an incredible yesod. Because let's talk about this for just a moment. I think very often we assume that the goal in life is to make things easier, right? The goal in life is to go ahead and minimize the amount of effort necessary for any particular initiative or endeavor, right? That's my goal. I want an app to help me with this. I want a time-saving device to help me with this. I want 5G to help me with this. All of it is to go ahead and ensure that things can be done in an easier way. Now, of course, there is definitely a concept of creating greater efficiency. That's no question. And Baruch Hashem, we are privileged to live in an age of such incredible technological advances that the ability to do things in a more efficient fashion is definitely there. But the question is, efficiency for what purpose? Efficiency for what? Efficiency is not an ends. Efficiency is a means. So if I'm more efficient, what's the goal? And this is an interesting question to ask ourselves, and perhaps an interesting question to ponder in general. So I want to engage in time-saving mechanisms, devices, different things. Why? Why? So I think a lot of times you say, because you know what, this will have more time for me, more time to relax. But is that really the goal of the Jew? Is that really my goal to relax? Is that really it? Is that really the avoda? And of course the answer is a resounding no. Even before the pasuk in Iyov of Adam la'amal yulad, HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself tells us, Sheishes yamim tasem melachtecha. 6 days there's an obligation to work. Now, how you work and what you work in, that's your own choice. But at the end of the day, there is an obligation to toil. There is an obligation to work hard. And this is an incredible yesod. And it means working hard in whatever it is that you're going to do. You know, Baruch Hashem, I have twin boys, twin sons, who are third-year base medrash in Yisrael. And I always tell them that, you know, a person who sits and learns also has a job. His job is sitting and learning. And so therefore he has to be careful with how he sits and learns. You know, sometimes the Bachrim, you know, there's a chasana somewhere. Oh, so we'll go to a chasana. Well, if you go to a chasana in Lakewood, that's half a day. That's half a day. That's an incredible amount of time. So I say, imagine for a moment you had a different job. You were an accountant, you were a doctor, you were a lawyer. Would a person take off a half a day of work to go ahead and go to a chasana in Lakewood? I would venture to say that unless, of course, it's someone very close to you, you wouldn't take off a half a day of work. Especially, I'll make this even more. What happens if a person got paid by the hour? A person was an hourly worker. Would a person miss out on 6 hours of pay to go to a chasana of someone who's not really their closest mishpacha or closest friend? And I would venture to say that the answer to that is absolutely no. So that's the way you have to gauge your time. Understand you're an hourly worker. All of us are hourly workers. So how do I use my time? So is it worth it to go? And don't get me wrong, going to a chasana is a beautiful thing. But sometimes we sometimes, in general, this is a different discussion. How wonderful would it be if we stopped inviting everyone to our chasanas and actually just invited the people that were close to us? First of all, it would be great because if you're making a simcha, you'd save a ton of money. And by the way, you know what the big unspoken secret is? How much of a relief it would be not to stop receiving invitations to simchas that you feel absolutely no connection to, don't really want to go to, but feel a sense of pressure because now I got the invitation, right? If we started making smaller chasanas, and I know everyone would like to think that maybe Corona will change the way we make simchas. I'm not as optimistic. I think we're creatures of habit. And I think that as soon as the pandemic is over, which Emir Tashem it will be soon, we'll revert back. But how incredible it would be. This is not a simcha shir, but just something to think about. Time to remake the model, how we make simchas, the amount of money we spend on simchas, and the number of people we invite to simchas is bordering on ridiculous. Well, one thing we've seen throughout this pandemic is you can make a small, beautiful, modest simcha that is brimming, oozing with incredible meaning, doesn't break the bank, and the truth is only involves the people who really matter to the simcha, not the greater community really who are peripherally involved and really are looking to check in and check out. Just right. Oh, they saw me. The Baal Simcha saw me. Right. Oh, good. I could go now. Really? So I'm spending money. Okay, different discussion. Any event, the point over here is be mindful with your time. Be mindful with your time. Imagine for a moment if before you spend time on something, you asked yourself, you know what? If I was a laborer and I'm getting paid a certain number of dollars, would I take off time from my primary job to go and do this? It reframes what you spend time on and how you spend time on those things. But the goal that David HaMelech is trying to teach us is that the goal in life is to be busy. The worst thing in life is to have too much time on your hands. Even the Ribono Shel Olam says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not believe in a 2-day weekend. He did not believe in a Saturday-Sunday weekend. That is an invention of modern society. He believed in Shabbos. You need one day because everybody needs to recharge. Everybody needs to recharge. Everybody needs a day to relax. Everybody needs a day to be with their mishpach a little bit more. Everybody needs a day to kind of be with themselves a little bit more. You need a Shabbos. You need a Shabbos. Shabbos Sunday? That's a Western civilization idea. Right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu says you need one day, which is incredibly important. 6 days you have to work. 6 days you have to be busy. 6 days you have to be productive. Because the moment you're not productive is the moment you get yourself into an incredible amount of life trouble. Adam la'amal yulad. B'derech chatoim lo'amad. The moment you stand, the moment that life, that there's not frenetic movement, is the moment you get, and I think we know this once from our lives, you might have a day where you're ridiculously busy, but the truth is the way you feel after a day that you've been very busy is such a good feeling. I feel accomplished. I feel like I've done something. I feel like I've lived in a meaningful way. Whereas another day where you just kind of shemine around a little bit, everybody likes a vacation here and there, but to be on perpetual vacation, this is incredibly important. You see this, by the way, when people retire. So I've often find that people retire in two very different ways. There are some people who retire, and the truth is they're miserable because before they retired, they were very active, dynamic, and productive. Now they're retired, so not having to get up and go to work for the first couple of weeks might be enjoyable, but then it just leaves a gaping void. Whereas other people actively plan their retirement. They plan their retirement. They recognize, retirement does not mean I've retired from being productive. It means I've retired from my job and now I'm going on to another job. So now I'm done with my day job that maybe I worked in for the last number of decades, and I'm going on to a different job. So what's my different job? And when people don't think about it this way, golf is nice, but how much golf could a person play? Visiting your kids is fantastic, but I mean, after a while, they get tired of you and you get tired of them. So Lamaisa, like, what's my new job? What's my new job? How do I plan my retirement in the right way? And this is such an incredibly important yesod. It's also an important yesod in terms of our children. Unstructured time. Unstructured time is the worst thing for kids. Some amount of unstructured time is good to relax, but children need structure. And they need to be productive really again throughout their day. This was we've seen this now. We see some of the fallout of this in that, especially again, the last academic year where the schools were shut down. It's not just an educational crisis that it creates. It creates mamash like a chinuch crisis, because without structure again, without a sense of meaning, without a sense of purpose, without a sense of activity, so many things fray at the edges. So David HaMelech is telling us, you have to be busy. You have to be busy in life. Adam la'amal yulad. And by the way, it's not David. It's not David HaMelech in Tehillim, and it's not just simply Sefer Eov. Kadosh Baruch Hu says this in the beginning of creation. When Kadosh Baruch Hu creates Adam Arishon, why does he create Adam Arishon? He puts him in Gan Eden la'avda u'lishamra. Now Adam Arishon, Kadosh Baruch Hu, you made everything anyway, so you couldn't just provide Adam's parnasa. No, Adam is put in the Gan, the Avda Ulishamra, in order to work, because work is an absolute necessity to feel like a productive human being. Now again, we all do different kinds of work, and all different kinds of work are incredibly important, but the goal is whatever you're doing in life, sink yourself into it, right? Put yourself, invest yourself into it, be involved in it, be busy with it, because the busier you are, the more productive you will be. The busier you are, the more accomplished you will be. The more free time you have on your hands, the greater the statistical probability of chait. Therefore, David HaMelech says, you want to lead an ashrei life, b'derech hata'im la'ama. Don't stand around. Don't stand around. Don't shmai around. Don't stand around. Don't stand around. Because if you're inactive, if you're passive, chait is waiting for you. That's lesson number 2. Lesson number 3 that David HaMelech teaches us. If you take a look at number 15 on your sheet, the Toldos Yaakov Yosef. Toldos Yaakov says something so beautiful over here. He says, Bazeh Amar u'bederech hata'im lo amad. He says, he quotes over here, She'eno omeinu madragasan shu derech v'shem v'chata'im, el holik b'derech tov v'yashar. She'eno mo'uch gorim chas v'shalom, skip to the last line, Rotzel Omer shelo amad al atzmo l'ishtok. So Toldos Yaakov Yosef, who's Rav Yaakov Yosef of Polnoi, who is one of the primary disciples of the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, says something absolutely amazing. He says, U'b'derech hata'im lo amad means, he says, Rotzel Omer, that if you see other people sinning, shelo amad al atzmo l'ishtok, you did not go ahead and stand in place and be silent. So an interesting interpretation. U'b'derech hata'im, even though again, I myself might not be on the derech hata'im, the pathway of sin, but if I see other people on the pathway of sin, I don't go ahead, lo amad, I don't hold myself back. I don't stand in place from not saying something. Instead, I go ahead and I tell them what they're doing is wrong. Right? So according to the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, ubederech hatam lo amad means I did not withhold rebuke. Now when I say rebuke, I don't necessarily mean, screaming and yelling at people. That's not often the effective way to communicate with people. But meaning, sometimes rebuke just means if you see something wrong that's happening, you have to say something. You have to say something. This is an incredibly important yesod. And I think this is one of the other challenges of contemporary parenting. Parents are often so concerned about saying something stern to their children, or saying no to their children, or telling their children what they're doing is not right because it's concerned that if I go ahead and I'm strict with my child, they're going to go off the derech. Now, again, children, Rahman al-San, go off the derech for all kinds of reasons. And yes, if there is an overbearing parent, an authoritarian parent, a dictatorial parent, that could absolutely drive a child away. But proper discipline and proper gidarim, and telling a child, you can do this, you cannot do this, this is wrong, no one ever went off the derech because of proper parenting. When I say proper parenting, parenting with rules and parenting with a framework and parenting with rules. No one ever, I feel confident in saying that people, no one ever went off the derech because of that. Other contributing factors, absolutely. Therefore, says the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, David HaMelech is saying, Ashrei Ish is not just about what you do for yourself, but Ashrei Ish is, are you willing to stand up in the face of wrong? When you see something wrong happening, do you just kind of pretend like you didn't see it and just go the other way and just mind your own business? Or are you willing to be the voice of right? Are you willing to be the voice of truth? Are you willing to be the voice of correctness? Not political correctness, but actual correctness. And go ahead and say, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. I love you, but that's wrong. I care about you, but that's wrong. I accept you for who you are, but that is wrong. Shelo amad al atzmo milishtok. If you see something wrong happening, as they say, if you see something, say something. Sometimes when you see, and this is a very delicate balance in life. Every parent knows this. Any parent who comments on every single thing that their child does wrong is doing a terrible disservice to their child. So there are definitely some things that you kind of let slide, right? There are some things that you just don't comment on, that you just, and this is even more so with adult children. Well, with adult children, don't comment on most things, 98% of things. There's like 0.1% that you could comment on. But in general, there are many things that I just like let go. This is true with our children, true in our marriages, true in every life relationship, things that you have. But then there are things where you have to say, you know what, no, I'm sorry. This is not right. And I have to explain to you why this is not right. Knowing that balance is often incredibly difficult. But I think in the words of the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, you could also read it a little bit differently. Remember again, the Rebbe said, Rotze lomar shelo amad al atzmo milishtok, which translates as meaning that a person did not restrain himself from saying something. I saw something wrong, even though I'm not traveling down the path of chatoim, but I see hate that is occurring. I don't hold myself back. I say something, because it's important to say something when you see something wrong that is occurring. But that lashon of shelo amad al atzmo milishok also means you don't silence yourself regarding yourself. Now, what does that mean? You know, if we go back to Parshas Noach for just a moment, I've often found that there's an incredibly depressing pasuk. The pasuk is in number 17 on your sheet. The pasuk says, this is to give you the context, Noach has gotten off the ark, right? Noach is off the ark, and what happens? He offers up a carbon. And the pasuk says, Vayarach Hashem esreach hanichoach, Hashem smelled the pleasing aroma. Vayomer Hashem alibo, God says to his heart, Lo osif lekalel od es ha'adama ba'avor ha'adam. I will no longer curse man. Right? I will no longer curse the earth. So actually, that's great news, right? Baruch Hashem, that sounds really nice. So here, Noach comes off the ark. The first thing he does is he offers up a carbon. Hashem is so taken by the carbon, he says, you know what? I'm not going to curse the earth anymore. Why? But then he goes on. Ki yetzer leif ha'adam raminu arav. For literally, again, the proclivity or inclination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Lo osif od lahakos es kol chai ka'asher asisi. And I will no longer smite all living things as I have done. And the truth is, whenever I read this pasuk, I find it to be incredibly depressing. Because it appears that what's happened over here, Hashem says, okay, I'm not going to destroy man. You know why I'm not going to destroy man? Because the truth is, I realize man is just bad. Man is just bad. Ki yetzer leifa adam raminu arav, which doesn't, of course, literally mean that man is bad, but man's proclivities, his inclinations, are bad from the beginning. So it almost sounds like, you know what it's like? It's like HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to man, you know, I expected so much of you. Now I realize those expectations were flawed. So I've just dramatically lowered my expectations. I expect so much less of you now. And that is so depressing. It is so, meaning this happens in human relationships all the time, right? I have higher expectations, then someone I love fails me, I lower my expectations. And you know, sometimes when you lower those expectations, it's such a sad moment because I have to let go of what I thought this relationship would be and now reframe it. Sometimes you have to do that in order to allow the relationship to exist, but it's sad nevertheless. And that sounds like that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing over here. So Noach comes out of the ark, Hashem goes ahead and he offers up a carbon, Hashem smells the pleasing aroma of the carbon, and God says, oh, really nice, but you know what, I'm never going to destroy the world again. Why? Because the truth is, man is not who I thought he would be. Ki yetzer leiv ha'adam raminu arav, man is not who I thought he would be, and therefore again I just have to readjust my expectations, accept the fact that man is a finite, limited being, and therefore I can't hold him to the expectations that perhaps I thought I could initially hold him to. So depressing. And what a sad way to restart the world with Noach. But Reb Levi Yitzchak Berdichev, Zecher Tzaddik V'Kadosh L'Bracha, says in number 16, a dramatically different idea. The Rebbe writes, this is incredible. He says, Vayarach Hashem esreach hanichoach. He says we're reading the pasuk wrong. See, the way we read it is, Hashem smelled the pleasing aroma. The pleasing aroma of what? In the previous pasuk, the pasuk says that Noach offered up karbanos. So Hashem smelled the pleasing aroma of Noach's karbanos, and therefore he said, I won't destroy the world. The Rebbe says something dramatically different. He says, Vayarach Hashem esreach hanichoach, second line, number 16, Mehechan bareach hanichoach Hashem. Where did this pleasing aroma come from? Meha Adam hakaros michomer. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak says so beautifully, the reach nichoach, the pleasing aroma, didn't come from the karbanos that Noach offered, but rather the pleasing aroma came from us. Vatam ki bekirbo shochin yetzahara hamesiso ladicho me'avadasa yisbarach v'miskaber alav la'avodas Hashem mehiskabrus zu ola reach nichoach la'Hashem. Let me tell you this, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak outside. The Rebbe says something absolutely amazing. He said, we're reading the pasuk wrong. The pasuk says that Hashem smelled the pleasing aroma, and we assume the pleasing aroma comes from the karbanos that Noach offered, but says no. Where does the pleasing aroma come from? It comes from ki yetzer leiv ha'adam ra minu arav. See, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling us was something dramatically different over here. I know HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that you have innate challenges. I know that you have struggles, you have difficulties. Of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows. How does He know? Because He created those innate, inborn challenges, proclivities, desires. He put them there. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I know your struggles, but I just want to tell you something. I so appreciate when you try to do battle with those struggles. I appreciate when you struggle with the struggles. I appreciate when you try to do battles with the proclivities and the desires and the lusts and the wants. I appreciate that. And when you engage in that internal personalistic battle, that creates the most incredible and overwhelming, pleasing aroma. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us, all I ask you is to do battle with yourself. All I ask you is to engage in the personalistic struggle. I know Yetzer Leiv Ha'adam Raminu Arav is not a condemnation of man. It's not a HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying, oh, you're so terrible, you're so sinners. It's not a condemnation of man, just the opposite. It's a realistic picture of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us. Our Creator created us with innate struggles. Our Creator created us with innate wants, desires, proclivities, pushes and pulls. That's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created me. So if you created me like this, what do you want from me? Engage in the struggle. Try to make yourself better. Try to make yourself better. That's all. And when you try, when you don't give up on yourself, and you try to become someone or something better, Vayorach Hashem esreach hanichoach. The pleasant aroma comes from ki yetzer leiv ha'adam raminu arav. The pleasant aromas is the scent we generate when we engage in the personalistic struggle. The pleasing aroma was not from the karbanos of Noach. The pleasing aroma was from the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I know that you have problems. You're born with problems. How do I know that you're born with problems? HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, because I gave you the problems. And all I ask of you is engage in the struggle. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on yourself. Don't say, this is who I am, love it or leave it, right? This is what it is. No, if you know your struggles, engage the struggles. Try to somehow perfect the struggles. Try to make yourself better. And as long as you're engaging, as long as you're trying, engagement in the struggle produces the most beautiful scent. And once you produce that most beautiful scent, that's all that Kodesh Baruch Hu wants. And that's what the Toldos Yaakov is saying. Shelo amad al atzmo milishtok. Or to say a little bit differently, what David HaMelech is saying is like this. Ashrei ish, who is the praiseworthy person? B'derech hata'im lo amad. What does it mean, b'derech hata'im lo amad? I didn't give up on myself. Amida means I'm standing in place, I gave up on myself. Ashrei, praiseworthy is the person who doesn't give up on himself but keeps trying to better himself, who is willing to engage in the struggle. Whether we recognize it or not, so many times in life, we give up on ourselves, right? You know, you hear this all the time, where I say, look, this is who I am. You ever hear someone say that? Or maybe again, you ever say that yourself? This is who I am, right? This is my temperament. These are my character traits. This is how I behave. This is how I interact. This is who I am. And as we've said before, in the lexicon of the Jew, there is no statement of this is who I am. The only true statement there is this is who I choose to be. This is who I choose to be. There's no this is who I am is a fatalistic, deterministic statement. I have no control. This is who I am. No, maybe a person could say this is how I was born, but then a person has to say this is who I choose to be. Ubederech hatoim lo amad means even if you sin, and even if you make mistakes, and even if you're born with certain innate difficulties and challenges, Ki yetzer leif ha'adam ra minu arav. You don't make a choice to remain on that path. V'derech ha'toim lo amad. Don't give up on yourself. Amida, standing in place, is the absence of struggle. When you stand somewhere, you're not struggling with anything. When you stand somewhere, you're at peace. When you stand somewhere, it's quiet. When you stand somewhere, you accept. U'b'derech ha'toim lo amad. I will not accept my shortcomings. I will not accept my innate and internal flaws. I will struggle to try to better them. I will struggle to overcome them. Sometimes I'll be successful. Sometimes I'll fall flat on my face. But here's the great news. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's happiness is not dependent on my success. The Ribono Shel Olam's happiness and pride in me is fundamentally dependent on my willingness to engage in the struggle. The Reach Nichoach, the beautiful, pleasing aroma that I generate in life, is not when I cross the finish lines. It's not when I eradicate a negative character trait. It's not when I overcome some internal lost desire, proclivity, or want. But the Reach Nichoach that I generate is when I try. Amida is the absence of trying. Amida is when you say, this is who I am, this is what I am, love it or leave it, right? This is it, this is it. What you see is what you get. That's Amida. And David HaMelech says, there's no Ashrei in Amida. There is no Ashrei when you're not willing to engage in the struggle of personalistic change. You're not always going to be successful in changing yourself. A lot of times, again, I try to change and I fall flat on my face. A lot of times I try to change and I change for a little bit and then I regress right back to where I was. But here's the good news. The Reach Nichoach, the pleasing aroma, ultimately comes from the engagement in the struggle, not in the success at the end of the struggle. U'b'derech ha'toim lo amad means don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on yourself. Don't go ahead and say, this is who I am, this is what I am. Rather, again, b'derech ha'toim, we all sin. But the goal is don't stand there, don't remain there, don't give up on yourself, don't say this is who I am. Engage in the struggle of personalistic change, and the beautiful aroma is sure to follow. So if we bring this all together, it turns out that again, so we had B'derech HaToim, so just to be clear, just to bring this all together, we saw Rabbi Soloveitchik's approach last week at Derech HaToim, that there's the Chet and the Derech Chotim, there's the sin itself and there's the pathway to sin. And in this week we see three really fundamentally different approaches to understanding the power of David HaMelech's idea. What does it mean? B'derech ha'toim lo amad. So ultimately, again, according to the Al-Sheikh, David HaMelech is saying, be attentive to life. A chet represents a mistake. A mistake is a result of inattentiveness in life. Don't live life with perpetual inattentiveness. Pay attention. Be awake. Be focused on how you live. Because if you're inattentive and you don't pay attention to how you live, ultimately you live a life of va'anochi lo yadati, or lo yada. So first of all, if you live a life of lo yada, you end up making terrible mistakes. If you live a life of inattentiveness, lo yada, you end up missing out on such incredible opportunities. But conversely, if you live an attentive life, if you are awake and you are focused and you know what you want to do and you know what you want to accomplish and you can answer the question of ma tivakesh, like the Ish asked Yosef, what do you want out of life? If you can answer that, you have attentive living, then no matter what happens to you in life, you will find a way ultimately again to actualize your goals and aspirations. Lesson number 2 was the lesson of the Radak. B'derech ha'toim lo amad. Amad, amida, means inactivity. Life is all about being busy. You must be productive in life. Like lahavdil, they have this in law firms and some accounting firms also. You have to have billable hours. It's such an incredible yesod for life. You have to have billable hours. So you're working at a law firm. So right, the partner that you're working under wants to know, how are you spending your day? You have billable hours. And by the way, what happens if you don't have enough billable hours? You could say, well, you know what? I was pondering the Constitution and I was pondering the case law and I was pondering this. Fantastic, really happy you're pondering, but you're going to be pondering outside of the building, right? You'll be pondering on the curb. Spend your life pondering. Billable hours. Billable hours. What have you worked on today? Be able to show how you spent your day. Adam la'amal yulad, la'avda or lishamra. Life is all about dynamic accomplishment. You have to be busy. Now, sometimes it doesn't mean you have to be busy with your job, but you have to be busy with something in life. At the end of the day, this is an incredibly instructive idea. Try to do this. Take out your daily planner, take out your schedule, and fill in how you spent your time. And a person should be able to account for every single hour. Now, by the way, it's okay. There might be 2 hours in there that's just relaxing, sitting outside looking at nature. That's fine. That's fine. That's called billable hours also. Billable hours doesn't have to mean I'm working on a job, but billable hours means my time is accounted for. I know how I use every hour of the day. I might have dinner for 2 hours with my family. Fantastic. I might take a walk for 3 hours. Great. However you want to spend your time, that's up to you to spend your time. But billable hours means it's purposeful. Billable hours means I know where every hour goes. You know what people sometimes say? I don't know where the day went. Really? You don't know where the day went? What kind of life are you living if you don't know where the day went? And even worse here, people say, I don't know where the year went. I don't know where the decade went. I don't know where life went. Well, if you don't know where life went, you have to ask how you're living it. And if you mamish don't know where the day went, then what have you been doing? So David HaMelech says, Ashrei haish ubederech hatarm lo amad, don't stand around. Because if you stand around and you're inactive, then yeah, you don't know where the day went. And unfortunately, the time will come where you ask yourself, where did life go? Life is all about billable hours. Make sure you're busy. Make sure you're engaged. Make sure you can account for how you utilize every hour of your day. And finally, approach number 3, which was the approach that told us Yaakov Yosef, together with Rabbi Yitzchak Berditchev, is the idea, B'derech haTa'im lo amad, that at the end of the day, don't give up on yourself. Even if you make mistakes, and even if your mistakes are rooted in your internal issues, your internal challenges, which we all have, because often that's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu programmed us. Don't give up on yourself. B'derech haTa'im, if you make a mistake, don't stand in that place. Don't give up on yourself. But I'm never going to be successful. I'm never going to overcome this challenge. It's okay. Because the reach nichoach of accomplishment, the pleasing aroma of accomplishment, ultimately, again, is not rooted or is not based on success, but it's based on effort. As Rabbi Yitzchak taught us, the reach nichoach comes about ki yitzer leif ha'adam rami nuarav. As long as you're willing to engage in the struggle, your struggle generates the most beautiful and pleasing aroma. B'derech haTa'im lo amad, David HaMelech says is, don't give up on yourself. Don't say this is who I am. Even if you've been trying to change for years and have been unsuccessful, don't give up on yourself. Keep trying. Because the reach nichoach, success in life, is not gauged by results, but simply gauged by efforts. So 3 different profound lessons that David HaMelech teaches us in B'derech haTa'im lo amad. We should be zochem Yirtzeh Hashem to internalize each of these lessons and in turn be privileged to lead a life of ashrei, be privileged to lead a life not just that's good, but a life that's praiseworthy and create an identity that is ashrei as well. We'll stop over here for today. In Yirtzeh Hashem, I'm pretty sure we will continue in Parak Aleph next week as well. Different phrase though in Yirtzeh Hashem, but a lot to do in this one kapitel. Yeshachar to everyone for joining today. Have a wonderful day and a great rest of the week.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Have a good day, everybody.
Have a good day.